Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming back again for another episode of Within the Cauldron. Tonight, we have a special guest, an author that I like. Of course, I like them all, but sometimes I like more than others. And this is one of my favorites because you just have to hang on. I'll tell you why. Please welcome Ivo Dominguez Jr. He is a visionary and a practitioner of a variety of esoteric disciplines. He has been active in Wicca and pagan community since 1978, has been teaching since 1982. Evo was a founding member of the high priest, founding member and the high priest of Keepers of the Holy Chalice, the first coven of the Assembly of the Sacred Will in the Wiccan tradition. And thank you for coming, Evo.
I'm delighted to be here. I was looking forward to it today.
Oh, I like when they say that. so, and my co-host tonight is my cousin, Nico. And Nico, you want to get us started?
Sure. I'm sure you get this question all the time, but how did you start your magical path?
All right, the really, really short story, because we could go all night, right?
Right.
I was one of those kids that always saw things, felt things. I was having psychic experiences from earliest childhood. So, of course, I was drawn to anything and everything that was occult or metaphysical. And I had the good fortune of having access to a good library. My dad used to teach at the University of Delaware. And as a child of a professor, I could go and rummage through the books at the university library, and I could ask for them to bring books in through interlibrary loans. So I was reading really good material, which otherwise would have been really hard to find in the 60s, 70s, 80s. So books were my entry point. However, I had I'm going to call it a stroke of grace or a touched by the goddess moment, because when I was in high school, I needed to do something athletic because my parents insisted. So did the school, because I was, I lived in my books. So I said, well, I don't want to do this, this, or this, but I got permission because I'm a good talker to walk off the high school campus onto the university campus, which was right there. And I did fencing as my sport when I was in high school, because they let me go off campus to go to the fencing program, which, what kid doesn't like, swords? I mean, sword play is, the thing. And we were changing in the locker room. I was actually enjoying the sport because it's an individual sport, and it's also, a challenging sport. But this guy who looked ancient to me because he was a grad student, he probably was in his late 20s, right? But I was like 15, 16, boop, out from his shirt pops the pentacle. My eyes go, so are you Gardnerian? Are you Alexandrian? Are you Georgian? And I just started spouting. His eyes got bigger and bigger and bigger, and said, stop. So, he said, let's talk about this in the hallway, because, he was, thankfully nobody was too close, but he was afraid of being outed. So out in the hallway, says, yes, I'm a member of a coven over in Maryland, but hey, you're a minor, and no coven worth its salt is going to take you as a student.
Right.
So which is honorable and true. And but because of the era, because that was way before the days of the internet, he says, but if you give me a pile of self-addressed stamped envelopes, I will make sure that you get our coven newsletter. And when you turn 18, you can look us up.
Awesome.
Which was like the most appropriate way to handle that question, not stifling. And also being really responsible about neither of us wants to get in trouble because you're a minor. And he was right about once. My parents would not have agreed to anything because they're what I'm going to call, well, my mom's passed on, rabid Catholics.
Yeah.
Not the cool Catholics.
Yeah, I can understand that, because when the coven was formed with us, we had a lot of teenagers that wanted to, be a member of the coven. He's like, no, you're under 18, I don't think so.
No. Though I will say one thing about young folks, because you don't want to stifle their interests. But you
Right.
have to, like, or you could pass on a reading list. Hey, these are some books that
Yeah.
Yeah.
there are ways to do it. So I will say there was one time that our coven was actually asked by a group of parents to come do a talk for their kids.
Mhm.
Oh.
And it was like about, like eight or nine kids and their parents, because they had been repeatedly locking horns with their parents about, finding tarot cards in their room or books that
Mhm.
look questionable, yada yada. So they looked us up, and that's one thing. I've always been open about everything, and because somebody has to, not everybody has to,
Right.
but somebody has to. So I was easy to find. So we said, sure, we'll come and talk, and you'll be sitting there too, so it'll be awesome. And we explained, these are the things to think about. These are some books to read. This is why you should, run, don't walk if somebody approaches you as a minor who's interested in bringing you into their coven, et cetera,
Mhm.
et cetera. And they were very appreciative. And actually, one of the moms ended up joining one of our covens eventually.
Oh.
Oh, cool.
The kid didn't. The kid got bored with it, But now, in that particular case, I will say that um, we often had open rituals for the public as well,
Hmm.
and minors could attend those if their mom or dad was with them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's what we always did too.
yeah.
Um, I guess take it back. We did have a member that came to us first, and then her daughter was like 16 and a half, and
Mhm.
then she joined underneath her mom as together. So she had to be there when her mom was there. They
Absolutely.
couldn't split up.
Right.
You
I do
have to
think
lay down the
I do
laws.
think I do think things changed dramatically once the internet and then social media came, in
Yeah.
terms of the kind of access that
Oh yeah.
people have to material and to contact, for good or ill.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So
That
we
is.
have one minor in ours, and it's my youngest brother-in-law, and he's just about to turn 18,
Okay.
but
You
my
know,
father-in-law is in too.
oh, well, the other thing to consider is, like, we periodically, things come and go in cycles in covens and over the years, and as people age out, or new folks come in, et cetera. But when there have been clusters of folks in our covens where people have a bunch of children roughly at the same age group, we
Mhm.
have had coveners that have gotten together with other covens in our tradition and had, coffee clutches or kids coven rituals, or we did this twice. One thing that we did twice that was really beautiful memories for all involved is we had a weekend at the beach, which was part of
Ooh.
people being at the beach. But in Delaware, there are a couple of really nice beaches that are also owned by the state of Delaware. So they're actually public parkland. And you can camp, you have to set up ahead of time. But one of
Mhm.
the things that we used to do with the kids is that we had them build sandcastles at the four directions for the quarters,
Oh.
and
Love that.
collect seaweed and shells to mark the perimeter, which just,
Wow.
and it was all washed away when the tide rose, but that was actually perfect.
I love that.
Love that.
Speaking of
Yep.
covens, because I've been researching, I'll always do my research.
Yep.
I've heard that you have a unique coven tradition. Um,
A lot of unique
can you
traditions.
can you tell us a little bit about that, if you can, and if this
I
was based
can.
on an older tradition, or is this
Mhm.
both down, or?
So here's so we've been around as the founding coven started in 1984, though the study group that led to the founding coven started in 81.
Mm.
So here's the thing. Imagine, if you will, you are back in the late 70s, early 80s, and you are in Delaware, which may be on the East Coast, but it's not a happening place. So, my lover and I, Jim, owned a metaphysical shop at the time in Wilmington, which is the only real city in Delaware. And we said, we really want to have a coven. We need to do something. We had a decent sized community. Just opening the store began to create a community automatically, and
Mhm.
having open rituals, yada yada. But the problem was, anybody that we actually wanted to train with was 3 to 4 to 5 hours away. And though it is totally doable to go take classes, attend open rituals, and so on a semi-regular basis. It really is not possible if you have a job, if you have a life, to commit to the amount of commuting that it would take to formally train in most traditions that I the caveat I added was with people that we wanted to learn from, because there's a lot of reasons of you have to like the tradition that they're teaching, and you also have to trust them, and settling for something that's a sort of fit isn't ever a good idea.
Right.
So what we did is we said, fine, it's not convenient, but we're not going to wait until the end of time, until somebody moves into the area, if they ever do. So we said we will start a study group, and we had a study group for a couple of years, and then that group decided that we were going to start our own thing. But what we did was divide and conquer. Each of us took the job of, I'm going to go train as much as I can with that group, and so that everybody trained as much as they could elsewhere. Now, we already had a couple of people in the study group that had some kind of formal training. We had a couple of first and seconds from different, Alexandrian, Gardnerian, the standard ones. We had two people that had Golden Dawn background. So we had a couple of other things. We had a mix of things, but we said, we're going to do this. So in '84, we officially went from being a study group to founding a coven. Now, here's the real test. And I always joke that coven years are kind of like cat and dog years, in terms of, because there are a lot of covens that come into being and they go through their entire life cycle, just in a blink.
Mm-hmm.
So after we had been meeting as a coven, having, sabbats and esbats and doing open rituals at the shop and local parks and whatnot for 6 years, after 6 years of functioning as a coven and still being together, we said, I think we know what we're doing. At which point we said, the honest and right thing to do is to say, we're going to, because at that point we'd also gotten bigger. But 6 years in, we had attracted 21 people, which is actually too many people for a coven. It's too many people for the kind of work that a coven is. It's too many people.
It is.
So we knew we had to inevitably split.
Yeah.
So we said, fine. So then let's create a tradition. So we had a weekend-long tradition retreat to create a tradition. Mm-hmm. We selected the 6 people out of the 21 that were, I'll say, the most learned, the most skillful, that had proven themselves to be responsible, etc. And there was a ritual where everyone got together and recognized these 6 as the not in time to create the beginning point for a tradition. That was the way that we created our first group of initiates in this tradition. Now, here we are in 2024, and we're 14 covens, about to be 15 covens.
Wow.
And the original coven is still together.
Wow.
So that's longevity. And that's that's the proof of whether or not something works.
Yeah, we have 3 sister covens, then the main coven. Within 5 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is that we didn't even start the coven. Actually, this is the truth. The goddess did.
Sure.
Because after we got initiated, and we just, we're gonna be solitary. We're gonna have a little kids, follow us and everything. And then everybody just started to say, hey, I heard you are a witch. Can you teach me? And, at first it was like, I don't know. And then we did. And before I knew it, we had like 16. So then we just somebody said, hey, let's start a coven. So we're like, okay. So it was kind of weird, but I'm glad it happened. It's family.
But you followed through, and it continued, and honestly, in many other cases, it would have fizzled out or blown up or drifted away into the wind. So the fact you're still around and doing things is significant, and not a common thing at all. I will say that you asked if I couldn't speak of anything, or if something was oath-bound or secret in our tradition. So because of where we were, that we could observe a lot of other traditions, and the community was small back then, so we knew almost everybody that counted as a lineaged person in our area,
Yeah.
broader area. And honestly, when we met and had this weekend-long approval by consensus, dreadfully long, intense process of writing a charter to describe how our tradition would run, one of the things that we chose to do was have nothing be oath-bound.
Ooh.
Oh,
Because it did not serve. I think having something oath-bound is perfectly reasonable in some traditions, because it's necessary for their overall pattern.
mhm.
But if you never have it from the get-go, you're not missing it.
Mm.
Now, there is a difference between privacy and something that is secret. So we don't keep a secret about what we do in our rituals or the nature of our liturgy, our practices, how we celebrate, how we do magic. That's not a secret. Now, people's private lives and their individual things, that's their life. So there is privacy, but there isn't secrecy. So I can teach you anything from our tradition. The only limitation there is to do it responsibly. So for example, there's some techniques like, I'm not going to teach that to beginner. If you come around for a bunch of classes, then I'm going to teach you, because I would feel responsible if you blew yourself up.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
so there's a difference between that. So no, the other bit is that we are not separate covens in the way that most covens are. Most people that are in our covens think of themselves as a member of the tradition first and their coven second, rather than the other way around. And let's say that there's somebody in one of our covens that wants to study herbalism, and their clergy in their coven, none of them is particularly an herbalist. They're into runes or crystals or something else as their primary thing. So as part of their degree work in that coven, they will go get foster teaching. They'll get sent to one of the other nearby covens, and that one of the teachers there will teach them. And then when they feel that person has learned enough, write a letter back to the clergy at that coven saying, hey, so-and-so has completed their learning of enough of this to count as part of their degree work. So I'll say more things and then shut up. The first degree and the second degree are granted directly by the coven, and the clergy in the coven decided. If you want to get a third degree, the clergy in your coven don't make that decision.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
If somebody's like today, I got an email from Jay. She was saying that one of her students, Kathy, has completed her third degree training, and then in May, when we have our annual retreat, Kathy will be interviewed by all the other third degrees, and then we will vote. All the thirds will vote as to whether she gets her third, not her high priestess.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how we do ours too. We call the committee, the elder committee, that you have to step in front of us and we ask you questions, and
Yeah.
they ask questions, and then we all agree. So it's not just myself or my husband as priests and priestesses.
It is a community thing,
Yeah.
and that way the person is introduced in a better way to their new role and to the rest of the community.
Yeah.
And in this case, I'm pretty sure she'll get the vote. I don't have any doubts about this one. But if she didn't, and it's happened in the past, usually it's like, come back a year later. Let's see if now. And sometimes they go, yep, and they hunker down and they figure out what it is. Sometimes it's been like, hey, you're not getting your third until you go into counseling.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what it is. And sometimes they walk and say, nope, you can't tell me what to do. And it's like, bless you, but we can't give you the degree.
We have a couple of comments. Sister Drew from Scotland. Nick, you want to read that?
Yeah, interesting. I run my own clan because we're all equal and have family bonds. True, sister. Absolutely. There's so many structures in there. I love learning about the different coven type structures.
I will say we have one coven, Oak and Willow, and with the exception of one member, everybody in that coven is family member.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mom and daughter and her son-in-law and kids and anyway. So there's only one person in that coven that isn't part of the same family by blood or marriage.
Almost like you, Nick.
I'm in two covens. I'm in the one that I started and run with my in-laws and friends, and then my husband's family have a coven of their own. And when I married into the family, I got the honorary pass. Is you've been included into the family, and you're already a witchy person, and we know this. So come join the group. So we do. It makes doing the rituals interesting because we do a public ritual, our coven rituals, and my in-laws, and trying to space everybody out.
That's a lot to do. It's a lot to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have a comment from our good friend Wendy.
Do you have an open initiation? I know a lot of covens close those, and they're only open at those.
That's a really good question. And so that's actually we're a little more open than that. So, for example, if you are getting initiated, and you would like to invite your best friend or your husband or your wife or somebody else that's really important to you that is not in any of our covens and may or may not be involved in witchcraft or occultism in any way, you may invite them to your initiation.
Which, that's how we do it.
And I think that does a lot of good, especially for making sure that everybody in everybody's family is on the same page about what's going on.
Yep.
There's the other thing is that if you are a first degree, like you will see a third degree happening. Your degree. There are people that are not initiates that are members of our covens that have seen first, seconds, thirds, and we also have a fourth degree in our tradition as well. And what we think is that the process of observing somebody else have the initiation encourages growth and development for everybody in the room, not just for the person being initiated. Now, in our charter, we have for each of the degrees, these are the following ritual actions that must be done as part of that degree. But most of the rest of it is individually written for each person, so that we never repeat the same initiation ritual. I mean, there are elements that have to be there because that's what marks it as a tradition, but every single one is custom written to meet what's going to provoke the most change for that person.
Wow.
So no, we don't close the initiations based on your degree level, and you also have the option. The only time that we've said no, or to somebody saying no, you can't bring that person, or we've had to make accommodations. Like there was one case where somebody, no harm was meant at all, but we said, I know you want your husband there, but if your husband's going to be present, we're going to assign somebody to stand to his left and somebody to stand to his right, because he's going to want to comfort you when you get all teary-eyed and start bawling and doing all the things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, and that would interfere with your process. So you better let him know that we know why he wants to comfort you and why he shouldn't.
That is so funny that you said that, because that's exactly the way we do, because it's a support system, is how we look at it. Have a husband that maybe is not from the same path, or, any kind of spouse, or having your older kids there and want to watch what you do and everything. So it's a support system.
But there's always accommodations to be made depending upon, because ultimately the goal is for the person to have a transformative experience and to connect them to the energy and the gifts that come from being connected to the tradition and to the line. And that's what matters.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Nick, next question that you have.
Let's see. Can you tell us about the assembly of the sacred wheel and the seeding of personal empowerment in April?
Oh, well, the assembly of the sacred wheel is the name of the tradition as a whole. And I've been sort of talking about it. I'll say something about what the fourth degree is, because that's something that's different about what we do. Fourth degrees are the elders officially, but their job, if I were to summarize the job of being an elder in the assembly, it's to be glue. You are a sort of every other coven in the tradition. You're a resource person. You are also the place where, if there is a problem that needs somebody to mediate it, that's where it goes to. One of the 4 elders there. The other bit is that the elders help to organize longer term things like putting on conferences, the annual retreat, things that honestly, if you are running a coven, it takes up a lot of your bandwidth.
Yes.
In some tasks, it's better if you have people that are not as burdened, but it's a good burden, but it's still a burden to do some of the other work. And also the elders are a repository of knowledge and also a redirection. So we have lots of open events coming up in April. You probably saw the notice for Spring Magic. That's a one-day event that happens pretty much every year in Springfield. It's a day of workshops. We usually have 2 or 3 workshops simultaneously. The day ends with a ritual for the stag god Kernanos. The money raised goes towards the New Alexandrian Library project we have. We also put on larger events like next February. There's a conference we're going to be doing in Maryland at a hotel, but that one only happens every several years. And this September, we're going to be doing a day-long festival of Hecate at our place. I will say that we are really fortunate because the assembly, we have a third of it's already been deeded over to the assembly. Eventually, all of it will be owned by the assembly, but a bunch of us bought land a bunch of years ago. So we have 100 acres of woods in southern Delaware, and that's where we hold our annual retreat and some of our larger outdoor events. But we also do things at hotels, and the event you're talking about, Spring Magic, is in a what used to be an old Quaker meeting hall. It's now a kind of like a little community center. But we do a lot of education. That's always been part of our goal. We also help run the local, Pagan Pride Day, yada yada. But wow. It's a lot when you're trying to also make sure that all the different all the covens are grouped in clumps of 4, so that we have a driving rule. Every clump of 4 covens has to be within no further than 2 or 3 hours from each other, so that the people in that, think of it like a village made out of 4 covens. Those 4 covens regularly work with each other, not just with their own coven.
Wow.
So it's really community focused. Which is why I'm saying that often people think of themselves as, or like it's really helpful when stuff happens. Like if a relationship blows up, it's really easy to get a transfer to one of the sister covens.
Cool. You have so many books over the years.
I keep busy.
Do you? Yeah, you've been busy. Do you have a favorite book of yours, or one that you are most proud of? And do you have any books that was really difficult for you to write?
Yes. Well, first of all, I'm always happiest about the one that I'm working on. So it's always the next one. But funny you should mention which one was the hardest. Well, once upon a time, there was a book called Spirit Speak. And by the way, this September, they haven't officially announced it yet, but you can find it on Barnes & Noble and Amazon, so people know it's there. But Spirit Speak, a new version is coming out in September. It'll be has an additional chapter. I've done changes throughout the whole book and added like another 10,000 words. But that one came out like 12, 15, quite a few years ago. I don't know how many. That one, I had finished draft 1. And I thought, this is not bad. I'm feeling pretty good about this book. And, I let it sit, because you always have to let it sit when you write something, and then go back and read it to see if you still feel the same way about your words and how you organized it. And I picked it up and I started reading, and I went, crap. Because I got this really loud message in my head. And I am one of those people that I have spirits and beings that I trust. And I got a very clear message that was a great start. Throw it away and start over again. So I had finished the entire book, and my instructions that came through were like, that was great. That was your warm up and prep work. So I actually trashed the printed copy, went dutifully to the computer and deleted the file and started from scratch.
And that's the revised book of Spirit spirits speak.
Yeah, the one that came out originally was in version 2 after the spirits told me to revise it.
Revise it.
And then this one is being revised because the publisher said, it's been around forever and it's sold well. Please freshen it up. But I will tell you that it was a better book. The first one would have sold and people would have gotten useful things out of it. But there were definitely things that only came to light after I was willing to make that plunge. Now, that's the only time that I've done that. But there have been other times when I have had to create a test audience in my head and try to imagine reading it to them. Like and it's not people, and I don't usually pick people that are like close friends. Like I'll imagine somebody that was I just met at a conference or had come to one of my workshops when I had my store, and I would say, I'm going to imagine that's my target audience while I'm writing this chapter, because I find it's easier if I do that, it narrows my focus. The problem with writing, if you've been around for a while, is one too many things and you want to get them all on paper at the same time, and you can't, and you absolutely can't.
Yeah. When I saw that book being revised, at first I thought, wait a minute, I got that book. How's he writing another book? I was kind of confused, but when you told me it was revised, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. So
it's got a whole new
copy now.
I mean, it has a whole new chapter on plant spirits.
Oh,
which wasn't in the original one.
It's an awesome.
But I like teaching, though I will be honest. I like talking to people a lot more than I like writing. So usually my books happen because I have taught a class several times, or a cluster of classes that are related to each other several times in different places, and somebody will bug me enough and say, "Why don't you make that one your next book?" Don't you have a book on what you just taught about? No.
We're going to take a 1.5-minute break. So audience, hang on, and we'll be right back.
Today's Witch Magazine, brought to you by Covered Bridge Press, LLC. Imagine a world where every month you're greeted with a 50-page print magazine packed with high-quality graphics specifically tailored for the pagan community. Today's Witch Magazine is your gateway to a universe of insights, inspiration, and enlightenment. Whether you're a seasoned practitioner or just beginning your journey, this magazine supports all pagan traditions and levels of experience. Each issue is a treasure trove of interviews with luminaries like Oberon Zell, educational materials, and thought-provoking articles. Subscribers rave about the knowledge they gain and the vibrant community they join. But the magic doesn't stop there. Other publications include their Travel Guide for Pagans, featuring over 309 stores across the states, updated yearly to keep your spiritual travels seamless. And for those who love a mental challenge, their Pagan Puzzle Book offers 63 engaging puzzles and 13 coloring pages, perfect as an educational tool or just for fun. Today's Witch Magazine invites you to become part of this growing community. With affordable advertising options, you can share your event or business with a vibrant audience. Their commitment to ethical values and fact-checking ensures you're getting quality content every time. So, what are you waiting for? Visit todayswitch.net now to subscribe and explore advertising opportunities. Let Today's Witch Magazine be your monthly companion in the magical world of paganism.
Hey, we're back. Hope everybody's still here. So Nick, I think you have the next question.
Let's see here. So you've written several books that you are a co-author on. How does that work? Do you write half of the book, or do you like alternate sections?
So there's the Witch's Sun Sign series, where there's a book for each of the signs, like Aries Witch, Libra Witch, and so on. And actually, I wrote half of each book and it was primarily the material that is the astrology and magic that applies to that. And the other half, or rather more like a third-ish, was written by author who was of that sign. So it was the lived experience of being a Cancer or an Aries or a Capricorn, a Scorpio, whatever it may be. But there were also lots of short pieces. So here's what my job was, besides writing my half. I wrote a series of questions that were prompts for each of the chapters that were then used by the second author to get things rolling, and also to provide continuity so that each of the books are roughly the same length and have the same overall pattern. And I had to find most of the authors, and also they have a bunch of short pieces in each one, and I had to track people down to do each of those and make suggestions. And some of the authors were not particularly knowledgeable about astrology, though they were good witches or pagans of one kind or another, and I would basically be their sounding board while they were thinking their way through how being of that sign had affected their magic. So it was, I was writing, but I was also kind of writing shotgun on the overall direction of the whole series. So it was a fairly complicated role. Now, the worst and the best of it was that because nowadays it's so easy for AI to be used to rip off and create a bad copy of anything or just a series of ideas, I couldn't announce it until it was already like mostly ready. And B, the whole 12-book series had to be completed in 14 months.
Oh my.
Yeah. Let's say I heard when the first one came out, and then I'd been watching the progress, waiting for mine to come out, and I was like, yes.
Yeah. So I was burning the candle at both ends and the middle, but it got done, and I'm happy it got done. I will say that one of my goals is to encourage more people to use whatever amount of astrology or working with the planets and the stars that they can or want to in their work. You don't have to be an astrologer to actually make good use of the powers of the planets in their various stations. That's not something that, if you want to be an astrologer, please, we need more, especially ones that are witches or pagans of one kind or another. But my goal of making people explore it, that's part of what that series is about.
I agree. Now, I know at the first of the podcast, I said one of the reasons that I just love your books is because I love all 12 of the sun signs books. Last year, well, I was getting them through the years,
Right.
but last year we was gifted my sign, Scorpio,
Yep.
and my husband's sign, Aquarius, for last holiday in December, and I was like, "Oh wow, this completes my set," you know. And I was kind of like really overexcited, you know, and it was like a must read, you know. So I was really excited, and I'm so happy that someone, you know, did these books, because I think they are very important. I'm not knowledgeable on astrology like I want to be, but I do love astrology. I really do.
You know, I think about astrology this way. Everybody, to get by in life, has to have X amount of knowledge of math, but you don't have to be a mathematician. You need just enough astrology for what your purposes are. Though I'll say that it's a good. All right, I'm going to say, if you are trying to learn astrology, just having those 12 sun sign books is a good way to learn about the signs.
Yes.
Very. And hopefully make more sense of family members and covenanters.
Oh yeah, I highly suggest you get all 12 books. I mean, because even if your sun sign is not one of them, that you are getting
your life is
12 of them together. It just makes so much sense with every sun sign that you encounter with friendship, relationships and stuff. And we do have a comment here from my friend Wendy. How did you find your co-authors on the sun signs?
So that one was hard because, well, since I was not like, normally when an author is putting together an anthology or a collection, they start posting everywhere, you know, please submit by the following dates, yada yada. But because I was told we can't do that, because just suggesting the idea will be enough for somebody to crank out a hack copy of the idea. So I had to go through my head of all the different people that I had met over the years and then find when their birthday was. And I actually had a data. I actually set up a spreadsheet to try to and basically went through every author I know and wrote down their stuff. And then I started contacting them. Hey, is this something you'd be willing to do? But I couldn't even do like a full thing because I'd signed a non-disclosure agreement.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, hey, I have this project I'm starting, and I happen to know that you're a Cancer. It's related to that. If you have time to write in the next 6 months, let me know, and we can have a phone conversation about this. Cool. So it was actually a job to just make the list and track people down, and then all the little short pieces, the same deal.
Yeah, I know we a big fan of Mickey Mueller, and she helped you.
She's awesome.
Aquarius.
Yeah, yeah, she's awesome.
So it was like, ooh, cool, a book about my sign, and another person I really admired too. So it was really cool.
It was cool. You know, she and I had like a 3-hour Zoom session to talk about the book before she got launched into it. And with her, it was even better because, of course, she does illustrations. So
yeah. Well, it's wonder she even had time without her.
That was just it. I had to. One of my questions I asked is, "Do you have time in your life right now?" Because there's some people that's like I would have loved, but they were too busy, or they were in school, or their kids were going through things, or whatever.
Yeah, she's a busy woman.
That's
for sure. Yeah, that is for sure. Nick, back to you, hon.
Besides being an author and your coven work, you also are very active in LGBT rights.
I have been forever, yeah. So, what do you want to know? Just what I've done, or where, why, or?
I guess the what and the why.
Okay. I had a very terrible situation. My parents basically disowned me. I got thrown out, yada, yada, yada. Or actually, I had to escape because it was pretty bad. Yeah, it was homeless briefly. I basically was the poster child for bad things that can happen to you when you're 17, 18 and trying to figure out what to do with your life. So, but I survived. But my attitude was I went through a lot of really bad stuff. I don't want anyone else to endure if there's any way to make it less horrible for someone else. So, funny thing, almost around the same time as I was in the process of starting a pagan tradition, a witchcraft tradition, Jim and I were also the founders for the Gay and Lesbian Alliance of Delaware, one of the big groups that no longer exists. But we also started the queer hotline in Delaware. We ended up basically. We ran a couple of political organizations. We did lobbying. We met with local and national people. We were always being interviewed on radio and TV, and being out in an era where being out was not a very reasonable thing sometimes to do. Mm-hmm. But it was basically, it's like, no, if I'm going to be myself, I'm going to be myself every way and everywhere. And whatever amount of influence I have by simply being out there and talking to people, I'll use it. Sorry. Earlier this year, the AIDS Delaware, which is the Delaware's AIDS HIV organization. Oh, by the way, my first bookstore, we shut down because of AIDS. Not because either of us was ill, but because we were so busy helping to start the buddy system and lobbying and doing stuff. We didn't have time to run a store and do that stuff. So the store we axed it. But the organization that was born out of that horrible worst days of AIDS HIV is still around, and they had their 40th anniversary as an organization, and I had the good pleasure of being able to go to their anniversary dinner. So I believe in doing the best that you can in every community that you're a part of. I've also done environmental work. I've gotten arrested in front of the White House twice, and once on the Supreme Court steps. I stopped getting arrested years ago because it made my honey too upset and too nervous about what would happen. So,
I know that is with protesting. I did a few in my life where my kids are like, "Mom, please don't.
Please
let it go." And it's like, I can't let it go.
I didn't let it go, but I decided that I would do it in ways that were less nerve wracking for the people that I care about.
Yep. I've done some of the marches, but my husband wouldn't let me. The BLM march here got kind of violent, and that was one where he was like, "There's a lot you can do, but from what I've heard in other places, don't go to the march because I want you to come back in one piece."
It depends. I mean, I've been tear gassed twice at marches. I've been beaten up a couple of times. It's not the end of the world, but that's for me, and everybody needs to make their own choices about where they are going to align themselves. But ultimately, I see it as, I don't see any separation between any of the work that I've done as an activist and any of the work that I do as a witch, because all my actions are shaped by my belief that everybody deserves space and the world needs to be healthy. And honestly, it's all one thing in my head.
Oh yeah,
I agree.
my husband worked with us in I can't remember if it's the pipeline or the women's rights march. I can't remember which one, but he walked with us, and actually, the both of them that we did was not violent. Thank God, because
thank goodness.
I have seen some that has been very violent.
I will say that I'm currently part of a group that does magic to protect people that are doing certain kinds of public demonstrating or speaking at public hearings or doing things of that nature. So even if you don't feel like it's safe or right for you to do work out in the field, so to speak, you can surely send protection to the people that are.
Wow. So would somebody email you or go on your...
People have emailed me and said, I'm going to be doing this thing, but also I've been doing this kind of stuff long enough that people kind of through the grapevine hear, hey, if you need a little extra protection when you do and sometimes the protection isn't about violence, at least not physical violence, but there are times and places where if somebody's, especially in our community, is psychically sensitive or emotionally picks up on things, standing at the microphone at a public hearing and being bombarded by everyone else's energy in the room is too much.
You get those people staring those daggers at you.
Absolutely. Well, or they get home and they're too exhausted and emotionally wrung out to do a proper cleansing of their energy.
Yeah.
So that's what other people are for. So there's lots of ways to help, even if you're not called to do anything else. And I think that it is possible to do all the things that you need to do and live within whatever your ethical code is.
Yeah.
Cool. I have to remember that next time I protest. Of course, I'm going on 16 this year, so maybe my protest days are over with. I don't know.
But even if you end up making a comment here on a podcast that somebody's going to disagree with you or take it the wrong way, it's clean up your energy after anytime you have. Let me put it this way: I have my birth chart rolled up and a bunch of other things, and I have them in an altar that is my protection against interaction with the public. Because if you go on a lot of things like this, or if you teach at a lot of conferences or at bookstores or do tours, which I do, it's you need to have something that's basically chipping away at everything that people are thinking, imagining about you, because the energy attaches to some degree.
Wow.
That's why I love blanket return to senders and transmutation words.
It's important to think about the fact that even if they don't mean, even good stuff is bad. I mean, there's some people that are really loved, or that everybody loves their new book, or they love their new song if they're a singer or a band or whatever. And there's such a thing as too much good energy being zinged at you as well, or oh, that person is so amazing. Do you really want to become your hype?
And we have a comment here.
Sure.
Marches. Oh, go ahead, Nick.
Marches must be a whole lot
They
scarier
are.
in the
They are.
U.S. with guns at it. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
Because
yeah, that's a thing.
the police retaliating and other rioters, and you have people trying to incite riots or incite protests into riots, and there's so many levels of conflict going on at once.
And once again, and I'm willing to go into scary places, and I'm willing to take a chance. I'm also turning 67 this year, and I've already decided I've had a good long life. If whenever I go, I go. But if you are in a place where it's like, nope, I can't do those. I mean, one of the things I used to do, I used to go to, even before the current troubles, I used to go to a lot of city council meetings and public hearings for different things. And a lot of times I would try to arrive early, not just so I could sign the list early so that I could speak earlier, but I would get there early so that I could sit in the room and clean the room.
Mm-hmm.
I would begin to, because those public spaces often accumulate a lot of psychic debris over time. So I would ground, I would center, I would hum softly in my throat, and just see my energy begin to grow and help flush the crap out of the room. So honestly, because if you can make the room cleaner, then the behavior is going to be ever so slightly more civil. Everybody knows that if it's a really, really hot day, tempers are going to be short. Well, those rooms are like hot summer days most of the time from the leftover emotional debris from the previous stuff. So maybe the thing that you can do is, and if you don't even want to do that, just sit in your car and stare at the building from the outside and imagine that the building is getting a astral scrub.
Yeah.
Cool.
So you can always do something useful.
Oh yeah.
We have one more comment here. Where is it at? Yep. Here we go from Wendy again.
Well, I got to say that it depends on the person. I know people that are in the military who are pagans, and it is the right place for them because it is their calling as a warrior and with the particular divine beings that they work with, and it is part of their work to be there. And being there, if they are willing to actually try to uphold the work of the true values as opposed to what it's become, then they are doing the work of the goddess, the gods, and everybody else. There are also people for whom the military is the only reasonable financial option at a stage in their life. Or, frankly, my first boyfriend was a Marine because joining the Marines was the only way he could escape from his family. So I'm curious. I mean, so there are a lot of reasons why. Now, I personally know, because ultimately, as much as I am willing to take a stand about a lot of things, I am I like peace, and I'm basically more of a pacifist at heart. Now, don't get me wrong. I will defend myself, but I am not in a headspace or a heart space where being in the military would work. But I will say that there are people for whom that is their calling. And there are a lot of that their calling is something else, and they need to move on.
Yeah. See, I married a pagan Marine, and absolutely, I was surprised at the amount of people within the Marines, and I was doing, all the spouse work and helping him find the resources and be like, hey, this is a part of your life, and he didn't know that there were so many resources available to him in the military for it. Like, they have Circle, and there's waivers you can get for rituals and all kinds of stuff, and I was really surprised at how well the military handled it.
Cool. A couple of questions here. Since 1978, you've been with the pagan community. Would you say that the Wicca pagan path has changed throughout the years? And if so, how?
Well, I'm going to say that when I got involved, almost everybody was either in a group or looking to join a group. And it was a very different experience that way. As a result of, I'll be real quick because I know we're running a little late. How about this? Suddenly there were pagan publishers everywhere, and you could find books on witchcraft and paganism and astrology and everything, tarot, at your local Barnes and Noble or between or Borders books or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So suddenly there were all these people exposed to this material, and they all said, this is really cool, and they wanted to find a place to be. Here's the problem: there is only so many people that any of the Grove, Lodge, Coven type, there's only so many people you can take in a year. And if you exceed the carrying limit of a small group, bringing in new people, training them, acculturating, etc., they blow up or bad things happen. So there was a big bottleneck, but there were still a lot of people that wanted stuff. So then you started to have more and more people that were like, well, I can't get into a group anywhere, and all the teachers have their dance card full. Because, and by the, I make a difference between teacher with a capital T and little t.
Mm-hmm.
Capital T teachers are the ones that are going to be mentoring you for months and years and following up on your work and having conversations with you. Anybody can be a teacher that does a good job teaching a workshop at a bookstore or at a conference or a gathering, but they're not following up with you. So they're not your teacher with a capital T, and they're not following a plan of education for you. So we then had several generations of the population continuing to grow. Oh, wait, second population explosion when the internet happened.
Mm-hmm.
Third population explosion with social media happening. So we now have a vast number of people that are learning about or creating their stuff as solo practitioners, or are receiving fragments of training on their own in different settings. So here's the good news. It's like nature is creating 1,001 new paths because a lot of people are exploring simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the bad news. Just when nature sends that acorn out there to scatter, 1,000 acorns, only a handful of them ever grow up to be trees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are, and I don't really like the term, but they are couch cushion pagans, or it's a hobby and not a.
Well, that's always been true. I mean, there are always been people that are in it for the aesthetic or like to know things but don't necessarily do it, and that's true with any religion or faith or system. I think what's different now is that there's so many of us. If you want to, and if you have the money and time off, pretty much you could go to 12 different major pagan events, one every month, and then smaller ones. You could absolutely inundate yourself with more knowledge. But knowledge isn't wisdom, and knowledge isn't integration. So right now we're in between having we used to have communities, now we have a scene, and I hope we're going to grow back into having communities again. But there are a lot of things that have changed. Like, for example, when paganism was when I was a baby pagan, I'm going to use that term for a second.
Yeah.
Drums weren't a thing yet. I remember the gatherings when drums became, let's add drums to what we do. I remember that things go through cycles. Like every coven used to teach psychic development. No, we're not going to bother with that.
Right.
We're going to work with gods and goddesses. Nope. We're going to go back to doing mostly spell work. So there are cycles of what goes into in and out of popularity.
Oh, yeah.
And that's normal, and that's okay. And I'm not worried about it, because if you wait enough years, the stuff that you like will come back into fashion.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, here's the thing that's the best part. And that is that over the years, paganism has encountered more and more different kinds of people and figured out a way to make them fit comfortably within the idea of being part of this group. I will tell you, the first two covens I approached liked me, but outright rejected me because they weren't going to take a gay man into their coven.
Wow. So we took everybody. It seems like.
Well, indeed, but that came later. Now it's the norm for there to be more appreciation of difference than there was back then.
Yeah.
Now it's more inclusivity versus exclusivity as far as covens go, where I would be very off-put by a coven if they attempted to exclude people for various reasons, besides not being a good fit.
it also depends on, and it's also okay to bend your rules if you've got a good reason.
Right.
There, like one of our covens years ago, let somebody in that they normally wouldn't let in, because this person had a history of doing some really horribly nasty curse word, bad magic to people. But they were also in the process of dying, and they were in the last year of their life.
Ooh.
And in the last like 2-3 years of their life, they decided they wanted to take a different direction with their life. So it's kind of like, well, okay, we know what you did in the past, but you're approaching the end and you're trying to make amends. So sure. But there had to be, but there was a long discussion, and that was the whole coven came to consensus on it.
Yeah.
So how can someone find you? I know we have your Instagram, I think, down below, and your website. Is that correct?
Honestly, either one, either Instagram or the website are your best bets. The website's probably always the best bet, because anymore with social media, you don't know what's going to happen from day to day, and whether or not your posts are actually being seen by anybody.
Oh yeah, the shadow bans are awful.
So the website I control, therefore I know what's there.
Oh, well, that might have been easier for me to contact you besides through Messenger.
Yeah, I mean, it's because but I know it's, and I'm actually going to recommend to everybody that if you use your website, if you have one, get one. If you don't, and use an email account as your, and because from day to day, I don't know what's going to work, or which social media thing will become the hot one and which one will be depreciated. But I will say that overall, I am hopeful for the overall direction of the community. And I like it that we are continuing to explore new avenues of practice and of community. And I just hope that we continue to try to be kinder to each other, because right now, there are a lot of people that don't like difference. And we're one of the few communities that is trying to make an effort at inviting difference.
Blessed be to that. That is
absolutely.
You said that very well. So,
diplomatically.
We anybody who likes our YouTube channel, please subscribe to us. We do episodes once or twice a week, and we have a team of podcasters that is also on our channel, so check them out too as well. And Ivo, it's been awesome.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
Yeah, I can still talk to you, but I know we have we have time management here.
Time management, yeah.
Yeah, but I just want to say thank you very much, and thank James Frez for allowing you to come.
He's been keeping the dogs quiet.
Well, tell him thank you for that. But thank him for sharing you with us tonight. And we see you later. And thank you very much. Goodbye.
All right.